Men, relationship history reveals patterns that predict future behavior more accurately than current promises or explanations. When women have problematic relationship patterns in their past, those patterns typically continue regardless of assurances that you're different or this time will be different. Understanding which aspects of relationship history constitute genuine warning signs helps you identify women whose past behavior predicts future problems you'll inevitably face. Warning sign 1. Every single relationship ended because partner wasn't good enough. When she describes relationship history, where every single partner failed to meet her standards, where each relationship ended because man wasn't ambitious enough, successful enough, attentive enough, or mature enough. When pattern shows consistent dissatisfaction, where partners were always deficient, blame pattern reveals. Problem isn't partners consistently failing. Problem is her having unrealistic standards or using perceived inadequacy as exit strategy when she wants to leave. What this warning sign reveals. This reveals she either has impossible standards no man can sustain, or she finds fault as justification when ready to exit relationships. If 10 different men across 10 different relationships all fell short in remarkably similar ways, statistical probability suggests pattern is her evaluation framework, not consistent partner inadequacy. She'll find you inadequate eventually using same framework that rejected all previous partners. The pattern emerges because blame the partner narrative protects her self-image while establishing that relationships end due to external deficiency rather than her behavior. By consistently framing herself as a reasonable person whose partners disappointed her, she avoids accountability for relationship failures while maintaining belief she's perpetually victim of inadequate partners. You'll eventually join list of inadequate exes. Notice if blame is consistently external. If no relationship ended due to her behavior, if she takes zero responsibility for any relationship failure, if partners were always the problem while she was always a reasonable person whose expectations went unmet, consistent external blame reveals unwillingness to acknowledge her role in relationship failures. Watch whether specific complaints repeat across different partners. If she criticizes current or recent partner for exact same things she criticized previous ones, if complaints are remarkably consistent across different men in different relationships at different times, repeated complaints reveal she'll find these same faults in you, because criticism pattern is her framework, not partner-specific deficiency. Pay attention to whether standards seem achievable. If requirements that partners failed to meet are impossible to sustain long-term, if expectations exceed what reasonable person can provide consistently, if standards seem designed to ensure disappointment, unrealistic expectations reveal she's setting partners up to fail, then blaming them for inevitable failure. Observe whether growth or learning occurred. If she repeated same relationship pattern without adjusting approach or reconsidering whether her expectations are reasonable, if no learning happened across multiple failed relationships, if she's confident next partner just needs to be different rather than recognizing her role, inability to learn from patterns reveals she'll repeat patterns with you. Why this is red flag. This is red flag because consistent partner blaming across multiple relationships reveals problem is her standards or exit strategy, not consistent partner inadequacy. You'll eventually be blamed for same failures as predecessors because pattern is her framework. Nobody can sustain impossible standards indefinitely. When you inevitably fall short, she'll exit using same script she's used on everyone before you. Warning sign 2, she's never been single for meaningful length of time between relationships. When examining her relationship timeline, reveals she jumps immediately from one relationship to next, with minimal or no gap, when she's essentially never been genuinely single for extended period. When each relationship begins right as previous one ends or overlaps slightly, pattern reveals she uses relationships for validation or can't function independently outside relationship structure. What this warning sign reveals. This reveals she lacks ability to be alone and likely uses partners for validation, stability, or identity rather than building genuine connections. Women who jump relationship to relationship haven't done self-work required for healthy partnership. They're filling void with partners rather than addressing underlying needs independently. Your gap filler serving function, not partner, chosen through genuine connection. The pattern exists because some women are uncomfortable with independence and use relationship structure to avoid being alone. Each partner provides temporary solution to discomfort with being single. When current relationship becomes unsatisfying, rather than leaving and spending time alone, she lines up replacement to transition directly into next relationship without gap. Your next in succession line. Notice if relationship timeline shows continuous partnership. If tracing her relationship history reveals unbroken chain where each relationship started as previous one ended, if she's been in relationships continuously since teenage years, without meaningful single periods, continuous partnership reveals relationship dependence rather than choosing partners through genuine preference. Watch whether she has clear identity outside relationships. If she seems to lack independent identity, if her sense of self changes dramatically, with each partner adopting their interests and personality, if she's chameleon who transforms to match whoever she's with, unstable identity reveals she uses relationships to define herself rather than having solid independent self. Pay attention to whether current relationship overlapped with previous one. If your relationship began before previous one officially ended, if timeline suggests she lined you up before leaving last partner, if overlap is evident, overlapping pattern reveals she'll likely do same to you, lining up next partner before officially ending relationship with you. Observe how she describes single periods. If brief single periods are described as miserable lonely times she hated, if independence is framed negatively, if being alone is clearly uncomfortable state she avoids, negative framing reveals she views single time as problem to solve through new relationship rather than opportunity for growth. Why this is red flag. This is red flag because relationship hopping reveals dependence on partnership structure rather than genuine connection building. You're likely placeholder serving validation function until better option appears or until relationship no longer serves her needs. When that happens, she'll line up next partner and transition directly from you to him, just as she transitioned from previous partner to you. Warning sign 3. Multiple relationships ended with overlap or infidelity on her part. When relationship history includes multiple instances where she was unfaithful, where relationships overlapped with new partners, where she left partners for someone else she was already involved with, when pattern shows repeated boundary violations through infidelity or overlap, cheating pattern reveals fundamental dishonesty and willingness to betray partners when opportunity or desire arises. What this warning sign reveals. This reveals she has established pattern of infidelity that will almost certainly include you eventually. If she's cheated on multiple partners, statistical likelihood she'll cheat on you approaches certainty. Past infidelity is strongest predictor of future infidelity. Women who've repeatedly violated relationship boundaries will violate yours when circumstances align with previous pattern triggers. The pattern persists because infidelity rarely stems from single relationship-specific problem. It reflects character and impulse control issues that continue across relationships. If she's explained each past infidelity as unique situation caused by specific relationship problems, she's missing that common denominator across all situations is her choosing to betray rather than communicate or leave. Pattern will repeat with you. Notice if she minimizes past infidelity. If past betrayals are described as not that serious, if she uses euphemisms like overlap or complicated rather than admitting infidelity, If minimization suggests she doesn't view betraying partners as significant character issue, minimization reveals she hasn't internalized that behavior was wrong and therefore won't prevent repetition. Watch whether she takes responsibility for past betrayals. If past infidelity is blamed on partners, they weren't meeting her needs, they pushed her away, they neglected her. If responsibility is external rather than acknowledging she chose betrayal, blame shifting reveals she hasn't owned her behavior and therefore hasn't done work to ensure it doesn't repeat. Pay attention to how your relationship started. If you were a fair partner or overlap from her previous relationship, if she left someone else for you, if your relationship began through her betraying previous partner, beginning predicts your ending. She'll likely leave you for someone else the same way she left previous partner for you. Observe whether she maintains contact with affair partners. If men she previously betrayed partners with remain in her life as friends or contacts. If she's maintained relationships with people she had affairs with, continued contact, reveals she doesn't view these connections as serious violations and maintains access to people she's previously crossed boundaries with. Why this is red flag? This is red flag because repeated infidelity establishes character pattern, not relationship-specific problem. Past betrayal of multiple partners predicts future betrayal of you. If she's crossed boundaries repeatedly before, she'll cross them with you when opportunity arises. Infidelity pattern is strongest predictor that you'll eventually be betrayed, regardless of how special she claims you are. Warning sign 4. Most relationships were short-term, despite her claiming to want long-term connection. When she claims to want serious long-term relationship, but history shows pattern of relationships lasting only months. When none of her partnerships progressed beyond early stages, despite her stated desire for commitment, when pattern reveals inability to maintain relationships past initial phases, disconnect between stated goals and actual history, reveals either she's lying about wanting commitment or she's incapable of maintaining it. What this warning sign reveals. This reveals either she doesn't actually want long-term commitment despite claims otherwise, or she has behavioral patterns that prevent relationships from progressing beyond early stages. Women who genuinely want and can sustain long-term relationships eventually have long-term relationships. If history is exclusively short relationships, stated desire for commitment doesn't match demonstrated behavior. The pattern exists because maintaining relationships beyond initial attraction phase requires skills some women lack. When novelty wears off and real relationship work begins, women with this pattern exit, or they create problems that force relationships to end, or they become bored when intense early chemistry settles into comfortable partnership. Pattern repeats because underlying inability to progress past early stages remains unchanged. Notice if relationship duration pattern is consistent. If examining her history reveals most relationships lasted similar short duration, 3 months, 6 months, if pattern shows consistent timeline where relationships end at predictable point, consistency reveals systematic barrier, preventing progression beyond specific relationship stage. Watch whether she can explain why relationships ended when they did. If explanations for short relationship durations are vague or blame external circumstances, if she can't articulate specific reasons relationships failed to progress, if pattern seems mysterious to her, inability to identify cause reveals she doesn't understand her role in preventing relationship progression. Pay attention to longest relationship duration. If her longest relationship was still relatively short compared to what long-term would be, if even her most successful relationship didn't demonstrate sustained commitment capacity, if maximum achievement is still brief, ceiling reveals her actual capability, regardless of stated intentions. Observe whether she frames short relationships as her choice or partner failure. If she presents short durations as her deciding relationships weren't right, rather than admitting inability to progress relationships. If framing protects self-image by suggesting relationships ended by her choice, framing conceals that she couldn't sustain relationships long-term, regardless of intention. Why this is red flag? This is red flag because history of short relationships, despite claiming to want long-term commitment, reveals either dishonesty about intentions or incapacity for sustained partnership. Either way, your relationship will likely follow pattern of ending within months, regardless of her claims that you're different. Past inability to maintain relationships beyond early stages predicts identical outcome with you. Warning, sign 5. She left multiple good partners for vague reasons she can't clearly articulate. When relationship history includes ending relationships with partners who are objectively good, kind, successful, committed, compatible, for reasons she struggles to explain clearly, when she left men who treated her well because she felt something was missing but can't define what, when pattern shows abandoning good situations for unclear reasons, inability to appreciate good partners reveals perpetual dissatisfaction that will inevitably include you. What this warning sign reveals? This reveals she has pattern of sabotaging good relationships because of internal dissatisfaction she projects onto partnerships. If multiple good partners weren't enough, if she left men who were treating her well for vague feelings that something was missing, pattern reveals problem is internal perpetual dissatisfaction, not partner inadequacy. You'll be next good partner, she leaves for reasons she can't articulate. The pattern exists because some women have internal void they expect partners to fill. When partners inevitably can't fill void, because void is internal psychological issue, not relationship problem, dissatisfaction emerges. Rather than recognizing issue is internal, she attributes feelings to relationship inadequacy and leaves. Pattern repeats because void remains regardless of partner quality. Notice if she describes previous partners positively, but still left. If exes are described as good people who treated her well, if she acknowledges they were objectively good partners, if she left anyway because of vague feelings, disconnect between objective partner quality and her leaving reveals problem is her internal state, not partner inadequacy. Watch whether reasons for leaving make logical sense. If explanations are vague, didn't feel right, something was missing, wasn't sure, felt trapped despite partner not being controlling. If reasons are feelings-based without concrete partner behavior justifying them, vague reasoning reveals internal issues driving dissatisfaction, not relationship problems. Pay attention to whether she demonstrates appreciation for good treatment. If she seems to take good partner behavior for granted, if she becomes bored when treated well, if drama or problems seem more engaging to her than stable, healthy relationship, inability to appreciate healthy partnership reveals she's attracted to dysfunction and will create problems in healthy relationships. Observe whether she recognizes pattern. If she can see she's repeatedly left good partners, but still doesn't understand why. If pattern is visible to her, but she hasn't addressed underlying cause. If awareness hasn't led to change, continued pattern without intervention reveals she'll repeat same abandonment with you. Why this is red flag? This is red flag because leaving multiple good partners for vague internal dissatisfaction reveals psychological pattern that will include you. If objectively good treatment wasn't enough for previous partners, it won't be enough for you. She'll develop same vague dissatisfaction regardless of how well you treat her, because dissatisfaction is internal issue she's projecting onto relationships rather than relationship-specific problem with solutions. Warning sign 6. Every relationship ended exactly the same way, despite different partners. When examining how her relationships ended reveals identical pattern. She always leaves when things get serious. She always exits during conflict. She always ends things when partners want commitment. If ending pattern is remarkably consistent across different partners, in different relationships at different times, repeated pattern reveals this is her exit strategy, not coincidence of partners consistently triggering same ending. What this warning sign reveals? This reveals she has consistent exit pattern that activates under specific conditions regardless of partner. If every relationship ends when commitment is requested, pattern reveals commitment avoidance, not partner-specific problems. If every relationship ends during first major conflict, pattern reveals conflict avoidance. Consistent ending reveals her behavioral pattern, not partner inadequacy. The pattern persists because it's her established response to specific relationship circumstances. When certain trigger occurs, commitment request, serious conflict, relationship deepening past comfortable point, she executes same exit strategy she's used repeatedly. Pattern is so established it's essentially automatic. She'll use identical exit strategy with you when same trigger occurs. Notice what circumstances preceded each ending. If reviewing her relationship endings reveals consistent trigger, all ended around 6-month mark, all ended when partners wanted exclusivity, all ended when conflict arose. If circumstances preceding endings are remarkably similar, consistency reveals these circumstances trigger her exit pattern, regardless of partner. Watch whether she's aware of pattern. If she recognizes she ends every relationship the same way, but hasn't addressed why or worked to change pattern, if awareness exists without intervention, if she can describe pattern but not explain or prevent it, unaddressed awareness reveals pattern will continue with you. Pay attention to how she explains consistent pattern. If explanation is that every partner happened to create same problem, if coincidence explanation strains credibility, if she doesn't acknowledge pattern, reveals her issue not consistent partner behavior. Denial of pattern source reveals she won't prevent repetition. Observe whether current relationship is approaching pattern trigger. If past relationships ended at 6 months and you're approaching 6 months, if previous endings happened during commitment discussions and you're wanting commitment, if you're nearing circumstances that triggered previous exits, approaching trigger reveals you're likely heading toward same ending. Why this is red flag? This is red flag because consistent ending pattern across multiple relationships reveals this is her behavioral response, not partner-specific problem. Pattern will repeat with you when triggering circumstances occur. If she's ended 10 relationships the same way, statistical likelihood she'll end yours differently is minimal. Established pattern predicts you'll experience identical ending when pattern trigger occurs.